So during this interim period between the Dhamma sharing, I was reminded of an important point that I didn't talk about earlier with regard to change. And that is, a lot of times we want others to change. And it doesn't work very well to try to get them to change. And it causes us a lot of suffering. So in the same way that we were talking about how important it is to first and foremost be present with the way things are, whether that's some physical change in our body or some change in our circumstances, or whatever our reality, whatever the situation is for us, to really first and foremost just take that in, whatever our internal mental state is, our feelings. And this is also true of other people. And from there, we do what we can. But we often try to control things that are not in our control. And whenever we do that, we suffer. And even when we try to do that, feeling like it would help them, maybe it would, but we still don't have the agency, the ability to cause them to change. I remember my mother one time saying, everybody would be so much better off if they just listened to me. And in some ways she was right. However, it's not how it works. And we can desperately want our partner or our child or our parent to be different, to change. We can see how much happier they would be if they did, but we can't make that happen. And as long as we cling to that, we suffer. So if we first and foremost take it in that this is the situation, and we need to make choices then based on the situation of how much we are willing or able to stay present with what's happening, to want to be in the circle of influence of what's happening there. That's where we have agency. We can control, to whatever degree we have become a skilled manager of our own minds and our own actions. We can control our body, our bodily actions, our verbal actions, and our mind. But to become the masters of our own mind, this is said to be the most important. My mind is saying achievement, but that's not quite right. This is the most important mastery that we can gain. Well, in the Dhammapada, the Buddha says that the untrained mind is the most dangerous thing there is, and the trained mind is the most wonderful thing. So when people come to talk with us who are struggling with, maybe engagement with one of their parents, once we've grown up, we're in a different situation than when we were children. As a child, we don't have the power or the agency oftentimes to protect ourselves. So we may find other means to try to protect the mind if we're in an abusive situation. But when we're adults, then whatever trauma there might have been in the past, we have an opportunity to work that through. And we also have the ability to make boundaries. We change our own response. So sometimes we've seen and maybe experienced for ourselves the ability to accept someone in our life the way they are and then be able to interact and be so different with it that we're not anymore negatively affected. But sometimes it requires staying away or staying away part of the time. And really being mindful and aware when we're hoping and clinging to an idea that this other person will be different. Or we are, in one way or another, maybe a bit more subtly trying to change them. And even if we hope they see that we have changed our own lives and they're so much better, they may or they may not see it and be curious enough to try to find out what the heck happened. Why are you happier now than you used to be? Why are you happier than they are? But that may not happen either. So this is one of the beautiful things about change. We can change our own relationship to what's going on around us. And the most important change really can happen in a moment. And that's the change to being present with the Dhamma. So these characteristics of the Dhamma that the Buddha talked about, that we chant frequently, it starts out Swagato. Is that right? Swagato. Thank you. It's always when I try to pull them out of context, it's like, what? Where are they? That's what happens when you start so late in life with the Dhamma. But it's also good to be really glad it happened at all. Swagato Bhagavata Dhammo. So the Dhamma is well expounded by the Blessed One. Sanditiko, apparent here and now. Akaliko, timeless. Ehipasiko, leading onwards. No, inviting investigation. Opanayiko, leading onwards. And Pachatam, we tabo, we need tabo. I can do this over and over again, but not while people are listening.
Out of context.
Out of context. Inviting and being experienced directly, realized by the wise. Direct experience. So what is that? Do you know that feeling, touching into the Dhamma? It's available here and now, but it's timeless, dependable, immutable, available to be experienced directly by the wise, discovered through investigation. So the feeling of it, I guess I would say, or the experience of it, the touching in on it, that's much more immediately available for me than the words. And that's what I would encourage. So we practice that. Opening, it's an opening of the mind, an opening of the heart. That humility we talked about earlier, the reverence, the awe. And then we start to gain the confidence that that's always there, available. The Dhamma, available here and now in this present moment. And the mind can also change the other way in a nanosecond. Jealousy, fear, desire, aversion. And then notice that. And how does that feel? A thought comes into the mind and reminds us of, maybe some time when someone said or did something that we felt threatened by or hurt, disregarded, put down, something like that. And then, all those defense mechanisms or any of the defense mechanisms kick in. We're tight. And there's dukkha. And then can we breathe into that, seeing it, feeling it, knowing how it is, and then relax. There's so much of our dukkha isn't even experienced as something's happening to us. It's experienced as the mind reflects and recalls it. As I've heard that the neuroscientists have discovered that in our mind, it's the same thing. Even if we're watching it on TV or something, the brain reacts, the body reacts to the thought or the sight or the sound. Doesn't have to be actually some danger or some, somebody saying or doing something that harms us or puts us down in the moment. It can just be recalling it. When someone says something unskillful, it may hurt when it happens, but then we hurt ourselves with it again and again and again later when we go over it in our mind. And so can we notice that in the moment when the mind turns to a state of suffering? And can we turn it back again? Can we shift back into that connection with the Dhamma? Because what's happening then is there's freedom from suffering, from attachment, from feeling the sense of self, the ego, from wanting things to be different than they are, from perceiving threats or loss. A lot of times we grieve over losses of things that we thought were ours, but they never were. So we can remind ourselves, intoxication with youth, health, wealth, life. These things are not really something we can possess. The body doesn't belong to us, it belongs to nature, and it will go back to nature. We're borrowing it. We're using it, make as good a use of it as we can, because it's in this body that we can learn the whole Dhamma, said the Buddha. Everything you need to know you can learn in this fathom-long body, just this much. And as Ajahn Chah said, if we think about the body as just this much, we really reflect on that over and over again, then when something goes wrong, we go, it's just this much. And we have immediate relief. So this is the kind of skillful means that helps us to meet suffering and shift. Shift to understanding the Dhamma there, the way things actually are, accepting that Dhamma, accepting the situation. And from that position, from that state of mind, we can make much better decisions about what we can do to help the body, to help the mind, to help others. I mean, do you really believe that we can have a kind of peace and happiness no matter what's happening? Have you experienced that? I have, and it's possible. It's available. And in some ways, it's our birthright. We're born into this human life, and clearly, since you're listening to this and you have some contact with Dhamma, clearly you have causes and conditions that make it possible for you to be free. What an amazing thing. The best kind of change. So as you practice today or any time, and practice is, now I'm thinking, meditation, but it's more than that, much more than that. Training the mind and really noticing what brings happiness and pleasant feeling, spiritual pleasant feeling. The piti, the sukha, that kind of pleasant feeling that arises in the body and the mind from that spiritual contact, that spiritual energy. And when the piti gets really strong, the body feels so light, it feels like it'll float away. Some of the enlightened monastics talk about that in the suttas and their verses, in the Therigatha. Sometimes the whole body feels like it's tingling or warm. Spiritual energy. Sometimes we feel it somewhat when we're generous and kind. When we turn our attention to Dhamma, we feel that immediate, available connection to the truth. And sukha, that pleasant feeling that's not quite as energized and vibrant as piti, maybe softer, maybe steadier, calmer, a little more subtle, sustainable. And as the mind becomes more still, oriented towards the Dhamma, we feel more and more of that, these kinds of experiences. Natural to a peaceful mind. We can experience the same kinds of sensations when we practice metta, or loving kindness, or any of the Brahma Viharas, compassion, mudita, or appreciative joy. It's really joy in anything that's good. So if we find ourselves in a situation that's really difficult, there's always some goodness there. Resilience, kindness, compassion, selflessness. You see these examples, you feel them in yourself. This is a source of joy. This is a practice we can do anytime. Observing what's good, putting attention on what's good, whether it's virtue or giving, kindness, selflessness of any kind of example from any living being, can be human or animal, deva. That brings joy. And equanimity, the peacefulness, the stillness, the calm, the acceptance of the lows as well as the highs, an evenness of mind, unperturbed. So turning our mind towards any of this that's kind of infused with spiritual energy, spiritual reality. And these are the same things people did 2,500 years ago under the guidance of the Buddha. And the same things people do in other spiritual traditions, because the spiritual reality is no different. We express it differently. Maybe there are different depths of seeing. Seems to me the Buddha really saw it all, even the impermanence of all other realms. There's no eternal life, said the Buddha. But it's still the same spiritual reality, no matter what we think or how much we perceive. There's still goodness in what's good, and there's still development of the wholesome available to us. And it's important to bring up happiness and joy, that the practice is so much more about that than it is about suffering. This is an essential part of what brings about our change, the positive changes we want to make. The suffering is like a red flag, an indicator, an invitation, but we don't leave it at that. It can be a motivation, but an even better motivation is when we see the goodness, we experience the happiness and the relief from that suffering. We want to bring love into the mind in every way that we can, for ourselves, for others, for all living beings. Gratitude for our own well-being, for our support, the support we experience. For all good things. I knew a very elderly man once. Every time we parted, he wished me all good things. And I heard him say that to everyone he met. May you have all good things. Well, of course, the best of things is the Dhamma, the spiritual joy and energy and wisdom. So as you meditate, notice your mind. Notice the thoughts in the mind and use that wisdom to cultivate them or to reject them or replace them. Not with aversion, but with wisdom, with knowing. And cultivate joy and happiness, patience. The great thing is we can do this. It's doable. We see the good results. We experience them. And then as the mind becomes more and more still and we let go of thought entirely, and we let the process of the Dhamma, let the process of the meditation take over, completely let go of trying to do anything. And just witness it with bright and clear mindfulness and presence. And this comes when all the hindrances have gone into remission, become stilled. When there's piti and sukha, and the mind is bright. And then all we can do is observe. There's no choices anymore. And this is a beautiful state of mind, and that allows healing to occur and wisdom to arise. Confidence. And if the mind doesn't want to settle down, then we can give it something very useful to reflect on, like the parts of the body. Or the footsteps as you do walking meditation, the breath. And if the breath is too subtle to hold on to or to continue to observe, then something maybe more compelling, like the Brahma Viharas, or again, like the body parts, visualizing each one. Moving through the whole body. What does it really look like, that spleen of yours, or pancreas, or thigh bone, skull? The Buddha gave us many methods because we have many different circumstances. And we should not let ourselves get bogged down or confused by the variety. Use the meditation object that works well for you, and then apply something else when you're in a situation that calls for it. To give your mind the best possible support for awakening and change. Positive, powerful change. So I'm going to stop talking now and encourage you to really use this next hour and a half, roughly, to practice sitting, walking, noble silence, and whatever meditation focus is helpful. And reflect upon the connection with the Dhamma. Not just the Dhamma you hear about or read about, but the Dhamma that you experience right now, directly, immediate, inviting you to come and see, timeless, encouraging your investigation, and available to each person individually. No one else can experience this for us. We do it ourselves. There's no other way. Individually connecting with wisdom to the Dhamma. So I want to mention that we have our list of people that have been added to share merit with. So whenever you practice, you have the opportunity to think of people that you want to share the blessings of your practice with. And our list here is Misty, everyone in Gaza and Israel, Yuka, Alan Sunaki, Dorothy, Claire, Jean and Holly, Cynthia is having surgery on March 6th. Divya's mom, Nita's mom, Scott Keith, Stan McDonald, Shima, Vicky and Paul, Buzz, Connor, and we just added Serena. She's actually feeling really ill. She said the most ill she's ever felt in her life. She's got COVID and some kind of bronchial infection. So we're holding them all in mind, and you can bring people in mind yourself as you practice, and you're always welcome to ask us to add for chanting and blessings and yeah. So this is an opportunity to ask questions, or it could be about today's topic on changing or anything else. You having trouble hearing in the kitchen, or are you okay? It's okay? Good. Yeah, huh?
I'll have to leave now, but thank you for the retreat today.
Oh, you're welcome. We're glad you could join us. Yeah, it's good for everyone to know that we are happy when people come, regardless of what time or when they have to go. We've always had that standard. Take care, Wong.
Sorry, I have a question.
Yes.
So, it's very easy to like choose friends that are good, wholesome, you know, all of that. And
Lucky
then
you.
And then you have your family
Yeah, then you have your family.
of origin, not maybe your own family at the moment, but the family of origin. Then you go back and, you know, they treat you as if you have never changed. And so I find like I have to keep going over and over, like metta, metta, metta. You know, loving kindness, like refreshing that. It's like I have a well that once it's gone, whew, all kinds of fire can come up.
Ah. So there's kind of a metta cache, and then once you've drained it,
Yeah, that's.
you're
I have to really like go
at the
away.
mercy
Yeah.
of whatever.
Right.
Yeah. Well, it's really, it can be really hard to go back to the place of origin for this lifetime sometimes. I remember going back to visit my parents, and my parents were very good, and there is trauma, you know, but you know, I'd walk through the door and I'm 12 again, or 9 or something, and just amazing how that happened. And then it is true, and I feel like as a mother, with the help of good friends, and the teachings at various points, to really try to look at them afresh, see who they are now, and actually with anyone. You know, instead of having that idea of this person and they're like this, they said that, and you know, like try to take in them totally fresh, as if like zero out the past. I mean, I'm not trying to say ignore entirely what's happened before. I mean, I think Ajahn Chah was very wise to say you have to know the animals of the forest. You know, you don't treat the cobra and the deer or the bunny rabbit all the same, you know, or the tiger. I mean, you have to know. I mean, you have some awareness and wisdom about, you know, what people have done or do or are capable of, but there's also an advantage to seeing them fresh. And when other people don't see who we are, especially those ones like our parents that we would really love to see us as we are, again, we need to just accept it. This is their view of me. how bad can it be? You know, they're probably not going to do anything physically harmful. So we have to kind of really prepare ourselves sometimes to see them fresh, because they keep changing and become quite vulnerable probably in older age, and learn from watching them. I know Ajahn Sumedho talked quite a bit about his father aging. He said his father was a very, strong, capable, a successful man with power. And then in his older age, he became paralyzed and he was angry. And every caregiver, it sounded like he just was so hard to take care of. And they'd leave the room crying. And what Ajahn Sumedho said he learned is, I'm never going to be like that. And you can think of all the suffering there, that feeling of loss of control. Sometimes having power and control in your sort of at some point in your life can really be deceiving, because we don't really have that much power and control. And if we think that's, like what we have as a person, as a personality, that I'm this way, I deserve certain things, it should be like this, and it's not like this. And a lot of times as people are going through that, and they're not present, aware, accepting, developing, learning, changing themselves, or changing their own view of themselves, they can take it out on other people. Yeah. And really, if we can have compassion, maybe it's not just metta that's needed, but a lot of compassion. And yeah, it's not very fun to be around. But if it's...
Could I interrupt? What I like what you're saying about not wishing it was somebody, like I always think, oh, I want a mother like that, or a sister like that, or something, and that doesn't go very far. It doesn't help at all.
No, this is what we got.
Yeah, that's what we got.
And that's how we have to be with everything. Okay, we want it like that, but it's like this. And my own mind, like I'm thinking, like, wow, that's so weird. Like the chant is just gone. I've done it thousands of times. It's like this. The brain is like this. Every once in a while, someone passes through our life whose partner has dementia or Alzheimer's, and I knew this couple, they had been married 65 years. It sounded like a pretty good, peaceful marriage, and then the wife got Alzheimer's, and she's saying to the husband, "You're a monster, you're like, abusing me," and, he's just like, "Oh, what do I do with this?" So painful. And then finally they had to move her to another facility, and he just said, the bed is so huge and the apartment feels so huge, so lonely. And for all the wishing of it to be different, it's like this. The sooner we can change our own wishes and desires into, this is how it is, what do I do with this? Sometimes a way to think about it is, what's my job now? What can I do now? And there's a beautiful sutta where the Buddha talks about this, and he says, do everything you can do when something's not going the way you want it to, your health, whatever. Do what you can do. He said, if you usually do these prayers or these chants or this whatever, and whatever might help, you just do it. Do everything you can, and then if it doesn't turn around, and I figure, like, if you've got a health crisis and you go through whatever medical, you get whatever help you can get, or parents are aging and you do what you can to help them. And then if it doesn't turn around, you say, this is in the sutta, the karma is really strong. What can I do now? It ends with, what can I do now? So it's like, okay, what's my job now? What can I do now? There's always something. Yeah. Audrey?
Along the same line, my mom is 98 years old and she has small onset dementia. And she'll ask the same question every 30 seconds. And it used to irritate me because I wish she would be more cognizant.
Yeah.
And I just switched my attitude to a new moment.
Yeah.
As if she's never asked that before.
That's
And
great.
that has helped a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I have to admit, it doesn't always work.
Can't always quite get there fast enough, but
Yeah,
you've got
for
the right
30th
idea.
Time,
Yeah.
sometimes, but it's amazing how you can change it in a second, your own thinking
Exactly.
and attitude.
Yeah.
And it does help as we go through our process.
I'm not sure if you could hear that online. Could you hear that? Oh, great. Yeah.
Audrey can
It's like,
project good.
it's so amazing how quick the mind can change. Nothing's faster than changing than the mind. Well, if we build up our mindfulness, mindfulness isn't just about eating raisins, I mean, you really do have to use it for these emotional states. You gotta really, that's a great place to start. This is not really a put down of anything, but what we're doing with our emotions and our thoughts and our perceptions, this is really, really crucial. And to change the mind like that. I had a similar kind of thing when my mom started to forget and ask questions over again, or forget things that she never would have forgotten before. At first I was trying to remind her, no, it's like this, and because I had some idea that if she tried harder, she'd be able to come on, Mom, get with it. And I was the one who had to get with it. I gotta catch up here. This is changing. And sometimes you may have heard me before recommend this book, Contented Dementia. So it's a really lovely book about moving into the reality of your loved one and recognizing that what matters is how they feel when you leave, when the situation ends. Is this going to be a happy experience or an unhappy experience? And even if you think they don't remember, the feeling lingers there. And this we can think about this with everything. When you talk to your boss, you talk to your employee, you talk to your kids, your partner, is this going to be a pleasant, is this, in the book they talk about, like, what if all these memories were like photographs and you have a frame around it? Like, if it's a bad experience with bad feelings, it has a red frame, and if it's a good experience, it has a green frame. How many green frames do you have in your book? And that you keep putting the green frames. Or another way to think of it is, if I never see this person again, which could be any time, is this ending on the right note? And it's beautiful to keep reminding ourselves of that. And then, pretty soon, no matter how many times they ask, no matter how many times they inadvertently put you down because you're not what they want you to be, whatever, it's like, okay. I mean, there were even times when I would play the scenario beforehand because I knew this would happen, this is what they would say, this is how I will feel, and it's not going to be happy and good, but I don't have to hold on to that. How do I turn that around to a green frame? you know. And I don't mean selling ourselves out or doing anything that we wouldn't be proud of. I don't mean anything like that. Stick with virtue, stick with um, kindness and self-respect. Yeah, Audrey?
Along the same lines, I recently heard somebody say she decided to fill her life or day with abundance. So she was in a traffic jam and all the drivers around there, they're honking and they're angry, they're frustrated, and she decided to fill and look through the lens of abundance. As this, oh, look, everyone around me can afford a car, can afford the gas to put in their car, can afford jobs or have jobs to afford this lifestyle in this
Or whatever,
expensive area. And she thought of everything abundant around her, and instead of having a frustrating morning trying to get to work, she had one that was fulfilling.
Yeah. You never really have to worry about traffic anymore after that. You just like, oh, it's rush hour, so what? Hey, we're all on the same team. We're just all going to try to get where we're going in the right pieces. Somebody's doing weird things, you know, it's like, may you be safe. May you be well. Someone was riding with me once and I said something like that and they said, that's a bunch of hooey. You're just putting on the like top glazing. And I'm like, well, you know, it can start out like that, but then pretty soon it feels good. You know, you're wishing them well and it comes through you. And it doesn't have to be, you know, it doesn't have to be something superficial or, you know, like we don't want to just, this is not about everything being roses. But what James said earlier about, you know, having a little rosy tint, the abundance side, or, you know, like we're on the same team, you know, something like that can be helpful. Yeah. Joyce?
Thank you. This talking about dementia reminded me of a film that I watched many years ago. It turns out it's 1994, and it was nominated for an Academy Award. It's called Complaints of a Dutiful Daughter. And her mother has dementia. And she does a lot of really odd things. I mean, as people are describing. And it's made by filmmaker Deborah Hoffman about her mother, Doris. And I was just Googling it. It turned out it was on POV on public television. But obviously it's no longer available there. But if you Google it, you'll find it. It may be for like a small fee, but I watched that many times and it's just very moving.
Oh.
How this daughter moved through, you know, the kind of frustration to an acceptance and an understanding. Sorry, I've got the same throat thing you have. So I just wanted to put that out. I could maybe put where I found it first on the POV website. If you'd like me to do that, I could put it in the chat.
Sure.
Okay.
Complaints of a Dutiful Daughter. That sounds pretty cool. We might make a KBV movie night.
Well, her mother eating like banana after banana, and then she would pack her suitcase with some kind of a box of crackers, and you know, these things were just repetitive.
Yeah.
And calling to make a new dentist appointment over and over. Yeah, it's, oh boy, but it's really done very well. You just feel a lot of compassion as you watch it.
Yeah, there was a story in the Contended Dementia book of this lady who had been the wife of a military, high-ranking military officer and had moved a lot. And so she kept wanting to pack. And so what they did was they gave her a box, and she would, you know, like spend time just putting things in the, and then she'd come in and she'd unpack, and then she'd pack, and then she'd unpack, and this was happiness for her. She's feeling like an accomplishment, you know, and it's like, how harmless is that? You know, it's like we're trying to make things make sense according to our world, but her world, you know, she was fine. Yeah. And I think about this not just for that kind of situation, but entering someone else's world enough to understand where they're coming from, I think can really be useful. That we change our perception, our perspective, to see where they're coming from. And sometimes that means picking up a bit on the trauma they've experienced, or the sort of social kind of pressure they might have experienced given their situation, or, you know, whatever it is, you know, to become more understanding, less judgmental, and less demanding can really, I think, can really help us, help them too. Yeah, Ariane?
I sort of mentioned this before, I think maybe at the East Bay Dhamma, where I'm curious about what lasts in the midst of change. Because it does seem like intuitively there's something there. And I try to sort of rationalize it in Buddhist terms as like, it's kind of like things coming up, like sort of patterns that are coming up again. But I don't even know, that could just be me trying to talk myself into something. So I don't know if you've ever felt that, like a sort of this curiosity about, okay, things are changing, I feel different, or other people feel different, or the world feels different, but there's something that seems to be lasting.
Do you think it's Dhamma?
I mean, it could be. I mean, it probably does relate to that. But it's like, I think when I'm approaching that from a Buddhist lens, my attitude is always like impermanence. So I don't want to, I have this like aversion to wanting to say there's anything there that's the same. But then when I approach it from like, you know, if I were in like a more, I don't know, like Advaita Vedanta or something that's more about, you know, something cultivating like an Atman or something, my reaction is, oh, well, surely there's got to be some pure kernel, a sort of essence to myself, that, or essence to everything that's changing. So it's sort of like, it's come to the point where it almost feels like, am I forcing a narrative of change? Like, I guess my question is more, observing change, but not making change itself now the dogma.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. I think it's like you're trying to not crystallize something, like this is a thing, or you're trying to find out, oh, is there something that is crystallized?
Yeah.
That is, and I think the danger is when we take something to be a self, we're trying to establish that eternalism. And that's what you're trying to be careful not to do, which is good, because, it's like if we investigate those different concepts that are presented as eternal, if you really investigate them down to the core, you find they're not. However, if you look at I feel like you look at the Dhamma and the way the Buddha taught it, it's immutable. It is not changing. It is lasting. There's a certain kind of framework of the way things work, which includes impermanence of all the, form, feeling, etc., the khandhas, of everything in samsara that's impermanent, not self. And of course, the suffering comes with that. But then there's, there's nibbana. And there's the Dhamma itself, like when there's birth, there's going to be death. That part is not changing. But it's also not a thing. So every time we give these things names, they kind of automatically, because of our language, become like things. And as soon as it becomes a thing instead of a process, then it doesn't really, then we start to like crystallize it. And then it can be mine, or it can be my idea, or it can be my, it's some things, we think something's there that's not really there.
I think what you said about language, I think that clicks with me, that like, I think maybe getting too caught up with the words and trying to explain it is what's actually causing this crystallization or aversion to crystallization, because I'm always searching for what's the right way to describe something, or right way to explain it, define it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And the different ways that people who have attained maybe the whole path, the different ways they describe it can come under debate by a lot of us who haven't gotten that far, and then it's kind of gets confusing, and so I think coming back to the things the Buddha said, don't veer off into eternalism, don't veer off into nihilism, look at cause and effect. And the cause and effect continues to be consistent. So if we're looking for consistency, I think that's where it's at. And then this concept that I talked about not too long ago about some things being outside of time, like the chitta being outside of time. And if we recognize that, and then the chitta is not a thing, it's a process, and it's outside of time, so it's not under the same constraints, or doesn't, it's like the Ajahn Ganhao say, the chitta never dies. And you start to get a sense of how that's possible if it really exists outside of time. Exists already has me caught up in something I don't want to be caught up in. So, it's very interesting to.
Who says the chitta never dies? Which Ajahn?
Ajahn Ganha.
Ganha.
Yeah.
G-A.
Ganha.
Okay.
And he's
Thank you.
at Wat Sab Tui in Thailand.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, Joyce, is this a new hand?
It's a new hand.
Okay.
I have always been curious about this word chitta. Is it, could it be equated with awareness?
Yeah, I think so.
And is it
depending on
an
how you're
individual? Is it something
meaning
that we,
awareness? What?
do we all share? it?
No. It's not a self. It's not
So-
belonging to a self.
She's asking, do we all share it?
Do we all share it? Again, I don't know if we can. Well, I guess so. in a way. I mean, do we all share awareness? I think what I was talking about, the way I was talking about the Dhamma, or the way the Dhamma is described by the Buddha, forget about me. But that that seems to me like what people are talking about, like Ajahn Gana and Ajahn Sumedho. There's this, in the Thai forest tradition, the forest masters talk about knowing, the knowing, or the one who knows. I think this is what they're really talking about. I think they're really talking about this immediately available, inviting us to come and see, kind of Dhamma. And the words are inadequate.
And the whole concept is just beyond the mind to even think about.
Yes, it's we have to experience it directly, is what the Buddha said, and that's exactly right. And I think we do, even though we may not see ourselves as, however, whatever's happened in our practice, we do experience Dhamma. And to get a sense of that, some of this inspiration or uplift or guidance or knowing things that we didn't know before that come through touching in the Dhamma. And then, when the Buddha said, the night of his enlightenment, then he knew what was never known before. And it's like you don't get to it through reasoning.
Yeah, I've been noticing lately, and this is so puzzling to me, that something seems to be making choices that are really wholesome, actually, and they're kind of surprising because I don't know that I know this. But it makes this choice, but I don't have the sense of I am making this choice. So it's something that's very mysterious, and I've been exploring it for the last few weeks. And
Some people would just call it intuition, but I think there really is this awareness that you can trust. So when Ajahn Sumedho says trust awareness, I don't think he's talking about, the mindfulness of eating the raisin.
No.
He's talking about this, Dhamma that's there. And he'll use these synonyms. He'll call it mindfulness, he'll call it Dhamma, he'll call it Nibbana, he'll call it all kinds of things. But I think this is what he's talking about. And then, like, instead of trying to put it in a box and call it a name, making it a noun, I think we need to think of it as a verb.
It seems like having done Dhamma practice and trying to see more clearly and develop some wisdom, that's what is being accessed when I describe what I described.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not I doing it.
It's not I.
That the practice is doing it. I think it's the same thing that you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
There's definitely, like, that's why humility gets stronger as we develop, because you just know it's not me.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going on that 4-week retreat
Hallelujah.
starting next Saturday.
Great.
And guess what? The topic is awareness.
Let's hope it really is.
We'll see what happens.
Yeah, cool.
Okay, thank you. That was
great.
That was very helpful, what you said. Thank you.
Question I have is causes and effect. You mentioned that, and processes that we should be observing that. And I'm wondering, it sounds a lot like dependent origination.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's something that I don't think we've talked a lot about, or at least I haven't been aware of the talking about it here. And I wondered if it seems like dependent origination awareness. It's very dependent origination is very important, and I struggled to try to understand it. And I just wondered if either now or sometime in the future you could spend some time. Not, I kind of I do sort of get the framework of it, but like you're saying, be you should be looking at that, and I don't think I do that. And it seems like it might be kind of important. So maybe you could spend a couple minutes talking about that at least.
Couple years talking about
Couple years,
yeah.
yeah, or even a series of talks. I don't know. I'm begging here.
So, one good place to start, first of all, the Buddha talked in different ways about dependent origination or, causation. And he used different links. There's the 12, that's the kind of most common one, but you can do it in 3. There's different forms that show up in the suttas. And a good place to start is with one of those pairs of, and going backwards sometimes is easier. Like the way he did it, as far as I know, is, okay, there's death. This is a problem. This is the problem I want to solve. What is it that death depends upon? What condition does death depend upon? Without which you don't have death. Well, we know what that is. Birth. And without the Buddha pointing that out, that's not the way I thought about it. You just think of death as this horrible thing. You don't think of birth as the automatic trigger for death. We put all that energy into celebrating a new birth, and we're loving it. And when it gets around to time to die, whether that being is very young or middle or really old, it's never the right time, mostly, etc. We know. So starting with those ones that you see, that you can really experience, and see and investigate those some, like feeling. You have contact and then you have feeling. The feeling doesn't come up without the trigger of a thought or a sound, someone saying something, or feeling, touching something or something like that, so play with the ones that really are clear, and then see how far you can go with all of the links. Which ones are really like drop dead obvious. Sorry, maybe I shouldn't use that analogy. But and then take it from there and see. And the part where it gets a little murky is when we're talking about how we come into this existence, because it goes round and round. And then that's a challenge for some people to recognize, because they haven't been able to see the evidence directly. So then we start looking at the evidence. Why this kid is really an excellent musician right off the bat. Why that kid is my grandson. He could pick up a ball this big with his tiny little baby hand, one hand. What the heck? How does that happen? How does he anyhow, you just start noticing and see what you can understand about it. And then there's a part we can't understand about it until the Dhamma comes in and we see it differently. And then sometimes we don't see things differently until we're in an altered state of consciousness, which is meditation. But if we're thinking about it, we're investigating it in normal consciousness, then it's more likely to unfold in altered consciousness. And then we understand it. So, just simple things like anybody who's tries to solve problems like software engineering, you're debugging something and you've tried everything and you have no idea what's wrong. You can't figure it out. You go for a walk and all of a sudden, oh, you know where to look. It doesn't come out of thinking mind, it comes out of, like the empty space. And that's a kind of concrete worldly example, but I think that happens the same with Dhamma. I don't know if anybody's got any objections to that analogy, but that might be a way to start letting the mind go still without expectations, really relaxing, because that's really what deep meditation is, getting super, super relaxed, letting go.
So the aim of looking at causes and conditions and processes is to fill in the blank.
Understand how it really works. To
What
understand
really works, Dhamma?
the nature of reality.
Ah.
Because we have these ideas about things being constant that are not constant or reliable, etc. All these misperceptions we have are because we don't understand how reality actually works. And then we suffer over it.
That seems like it brings me to dark places.
Oh, what dark places does it take you to?
I like my house. My house isn't mine. It won't last forever, and neither will I. Oh, darn.
That was very well put. So then you enjoy it now, and you appreciate its fragility, and you let go of needing to have it forever.
That's hard work.
Or not. I mean, at some point, something might happen that pulls the rug out from under your feet, and then there's something else there that catches you. And you start to develop the trust that there's always something we can do, like we talked about a minute ago. And also those powers that help us, that web of good friends, that wisdom of what's wholesome and unwholesome, the energy to carry it through, the moral virtue, the blamelessness. The more we think about that, try it out, live it, the more we see that, yeah, I really don't have to worry about those 5 things. The house will go and it'll be okay.
Yeah, I've heard all this, and it's not new.
Yeah.
And that's part of it lately, is kind of trying to keep it exciting like it was in the beginning. I feel like the motivation, the virya, what you were talking about, the energy to work on all this, it's you go through these phases, I think. And what do you do? What do you suggest when you're in a phase where you're just not feeling it? You're just like,
look for the things that are most inspiring. Maybe it's coming to visit your nuns.
That's on the calendar.
Yeah,
It is.
and whatever it is. I mean, sometimes things get pretty challenging, and you can even see it in monastics that have been in robes for a long time. I mean, you never know what's gonna come along and kind of cause trouble. So it's like you can get really dry periods, you can get really, things bother you that didn't bother you before, maybe, things can happen, but You look for the bright spot. You look for what's the most inspiring and give yourself a break. Usually we're trying too hard. If we're trying to recapture something that happened before, because a lot of times there's a little beginner's luck going on. It can go on for a while, you know, it's the newness of it, and there's all these cool Dhamma talks and everything. And then what if, you know, there's like this stagnant period, and then that can happen, that plateau can happen, you know, and then you just, or one way the Thais often talk about my merits running out, you know, like I'm, and then there was, you know, you've probably heard me tell you this before, there's this monk, what is his name again? Whatever, he's still around because he co-taught a retreat with Ajahn Amaro not that long ago, and I was at Amaravati when he said that there was this point where he felt like his karma as a monk, his merit was running out. And a lot of times when people talk like that, then they're about to disrobe. But he said his decision was, I'm going to make more merit. And he threw himself into doing more service and giving more. And obviously he got through it. He's still a monk and he's teaching Dhamma.
Sorry, who was that?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember his name.
Oh, okay. I wasn't the only person who spaced out on the name. Okay.
No, it'll come to me, but later.
2 a.m.
Marianne! I think I could text. But anyway, you know, it's so it's like, you know, any of us can have that kind of thing happen, and then reach out and look for the things, because the thing you can't, there are some things you can't unknow. You're not gonna like, oh yes, Dhamma doesn't make any sense, or you know, there are some things you've seen now that you just can't unknow, and that's good.
Yeah, I'm hoping for that. Counting on that. Thank you.
Also, you know, sometimes you just need, like I said, we need to be kinder to ourselves, more of a break. Not
Yeah,
push
so
so
that's what this little part that I was reading in Ajahn Brahm's book about. I just love this one part where he says, I can't do this. It's hopeless. The teaching is hopeless. The religion is hopeless. Life is hopeless. And he says, all that negativity is obviated by caring attention. And he's talking about how you have to have this caring attention.
Yep.
And I was listening to the conversation earlier about using metta, and you know, I don't have a real grasp of that, and I'm going to kind of listen to some more talks about that. But I was curious, like, what's your self-talk when that happens to you? You probably don't have that conversation like he said, but you know, it's just easy to say, oh, we'll just do caring attention or have metta, but I think there's like a talk that you have to do to yourself, and I sometimes just go blank there.
Right. I think again, I think you have to find what matters to your mind at the time, the positive, and remind yourself of that. You know, there was this lady I knew who was Buddhist, and I don't know at what point she was seeing a therapist, and she kept saying, I don't know, you know, about this, that, and the therapist finally said, well, what do you know? What do you know? And at that time, it was before I met up with the Dhamma, and I started to think about it. You know, like, what do I know for sure? And I started to write things down. And maybe that's an exercise that could help.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you just have to keep reminding yourself of these things, getting refreshed, like you said.
Yeah.
But it's frustrating, and when
Maybe
you're
don't
not,
think about metta so much, just think about kindness. You know what kindness is. You know, be kind to yourself, give yourself some slack.
yeah, when I'm in meditation and this happens, sometimes I find I can be kind to myself. Like, it's okay. Everything's going to be okay. You know, you're safe. I hope you're going to be happy and healthy and have some ease. And sometimes things do kind of uh, soften up.
Mm-hmm.
And then, maybe some of the hindrances fall away. And then I can get to that little bit of silence. And then I try not to cling to that, but it does, that's about as good as you can get sometimes, in terms of taking care of yourself, I guess.
I mean, I know you love being in nature, and that can really help.
Yeah.
You know, get out there in nature. I mean, this is partly why we live in the forest. You know, it's just
Yeah.
incredibly beautiful. And
I think that's it. It's been a long winter, but tomorrow I'll be kayaking.
oh, you
So
got to look at your other
I'm
computer.
sorry. I think that's part of it, but tomorrow I'll be kayaking, so maybe that'll help.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Take in that natural.
Yeah, need to make that more regular. Good thought. All right, thank you. Sorry to take up.
No, it's okay. It's good. Christine. Oh, okay. She's got a message for you, Paula.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks, Christine.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's a new monastery coming into Christine's neighborhood that's going to give her a lot of good stuff to do. Some real joy, I think. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, a lot of times we're just trying too hard when we get to that. We're just trying too hard. We're beating ourselves up and got to learn this and got to do that and got to try all these things that the Buddha said, and we don't have to try all the things the Buddha said. We need to develop generosity and virtue and samadhi, but you don't have to. We don't have to make it into a goal-oriented program, of accomplishment like we're taught to do in life. So, yeah. Okay, thank you all for sharing. So we're kind of coming to the close here of the day. I think we'll do some chanting. Just a little. Yeah. You want to chant?
We do the highest blessings.
Oh, that's a nice one. Do you want to chant along? No pressure. It's one of the things we say on the website now. There's a bunch of chanting books up there if you
Or
want.
you can turn it around and we can put it on the screen.
Oh, that's true. We can. Yeah, we can do that too. Whoever wants a chanting book, just. And it's page.
Oh, I have to put it up for the people online anyway.
Yeah, she's going to put it up there. The highest blessings is on page 27. If you want a chanting book.
That's good, Jay.
27. Yeah.
Can you use the
Yeah, there you go. So this is a sutta, and it's also one of the most loved and chanted suttas, called the Mangala Sutta. like so many stories of the devas coming to visit the Buddha and asking him questions. He talked to devas just like he talked to people. So they're just living beings out there with some of the same desires we have. Thus have I heard that the Blessed One was staying at Savatthi, residing at the Jeta's Grove in Anathapindika's park. Then in the dark of the night a radiant Deva illuminated all Jeta's Grove. She bowed down low before the Blessed One, then standing to one side she said, Devas are concerned for happiness and ever long for peace. The same is true for humankind. What then are the highest blessings? Avoiding those of foolish ways, associating with the wise, and honoring those worthy of honor. These are the highest blessings. Living in places of suitable kinds, with the fruits of past good deeds, and guided by the rightful way. These are the highest blessings. Accomplished in learning and craftsman skills, with discipline highly trained, and speech that is true and pleasant to hear. These are the highest blessings. Providing for mother and father's support, and cherishing family, and ways of work that harm no being. These are the highest blessings. Generosity and a righteous life, offering help to relatives and kin, and acting in ways that leave no blame. These are the highest blessings. Steadfast in restraint and shunning evil ways, avoiding intoxicants that dull the mind, and heedfulness in all things that arise. These are the highest blessings. Respectfulness and of humble ways, contentment and gratitude, and hearing the Dhamma frequently taught. These are the highest blessings. Patience and willingness to accept one's faults, seeing venerated seekers of the truth, and sharing often the words of Dhamma. These are the highest blessings. The holy life lived with ardent effort, seeing for oneself the noble truths, and the realization of Nibbana. These are the highest blessings. Although involved in worldly tasks, unshaken the mind remains, and beyond all sorrow spotless secure. These are the highest blessings. They who live by following this path know victory wherever they go, and every place for them is safe. These are the highest blessings. So, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Should we bow to the Buddha? There's a chant for this on page, 20? If you want. Yeah, that's one right there. Anybody wants it? The noble, the perfectly enlightened and blessed one, I render homage to the Buddha, the blessed one. The teachings so completely explained by him, I bow to the Dhamma. The Blessed One's disciples who have practiced well, I bow to the Sangha. Okay.
Bow to the teacher.
If you want. Yeah, wonderful. Well, thank you everybody online too. Take good care of yourselves.